And we're on.
All right. Well, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. This is our 10th episode of the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. And the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles is one of a kind podcast that converses with passionate community partners, highlights outstanding reclamation and community cleanup efforts. We're showcasing stream improvement successes and talking about projects that are out there across Pennsylvania where we're sharing emergent ideas and technologies to reclaim and remediate abandoned mine drainage and abandoned mine lands from legacy mining impacts across Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Bobby Hughes, Executive Director for the Eastern Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, and I'm joined here today by my co-host, Andy McAllister, the Regional Coordinator for the Western Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation.
Thanks, Bobby. And first of all, I want to preface my appearance here in a storm coming up pretty soon. So if I seem to break up or disappear for 2 or 3 seconds, bear with me. I'll be back. I'm on a satellite where I'm at. First, we must thank the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds for underwriting the first 12 episodes of this podcast. All the previous episodes have been archived.
The storm has hit.
Audiences on a new level. So feel free to put your questions and comments into comments box of whatever program or application you are joining us from. Bobby, back to you.
All right, Andy, I think the storm has hit, so I'll just quickly just say that we cut out when you were talking about who was funding the particular program here. So I'll just quickly say that the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds has underwritten the first 12 episodes of the Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles podcast here, and they're archived on our YouTube channels for both Epcamera and Whipcamera if you want to take a look at any of the ones that have been previously casted. So you can definitely take a look at that. So we're hopeful that the live streaming personal interviews and the discussions that we have are timely and they're related to abandoned mine reclamation. And it's hopeful that we can engage our audiences across Pennsylvania and hear from people that are really doing some good work. So as Andy had said, put your questions and comments into the comment boxes and we'll try to get them during the episode here. So I'd like to take the
Thank you,
time to
Bobby.
introduce. Yeah, no problem, man. I'd like to take the time to kind of introduce our guest here today. I'm talking to Kelly Williams, and she's with the Clearfield County Conservation District. She's been a watershed specialist there at the district for 17 years. She's also on the board of the Western Pennsylvania Coalition for Abandoned Mine Reclamation, the Headwaters Resource Conservation and Development Council, and the Allegheny Mountain Chapter of Trata Limited. From a very young age, Kelly has had a love of the environment, which has led to her associate's degree in wildlife technology and a bachelor's degree in wildlife and fishery science from Penn State, and ultimately her career as a watershed specialist at the district. Many folks may not know, but Clearfield County has the most stream miles impaired by abandoned mine drainage and the most abandoned mine land features and the most acres of abandoned mine lands in Pennsylvania. And so because of that unique claim to fame, her focus has been really on the remediation of abandoned mine drainage and abandoned mine lands to bring back life to the impaired waterways of Clearfield County. And with her years of experience, she's also worked on overall grant management and compliance at the Conservation District. She's the working with the Chesapeake Bay Countywide Action Plan, and she's a coordinator for that program for the county that she'll get to talk to us about a little bit later. She assists the agricultural technician at the district with the installation of best management practices on farming operations, and she also works with their resource conservation technicians on stream restoration projects. There's just a lot of great work that goes on at the conservation districts that she'll get into as well. And then when she's not working on watershed restoration projects, you can bet you can find her out fishing, birding, gardening, or even walking her dogs.
Thank you. Welcome, Kelly. It's a long time no see. Thanks so
Yeah,
much for
happy
being our
here.
guest. Thank you so much for being our guest on the podcast. We'd like to get to know our guests on a personal level. So, can you tell us a little bit about where you grew up, where you're from now, about your family, and do you have a personal connection to mining, either abandoned or active, or the reclamation work you're doing now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually am from Jefferson County, so just one county over from Clearfield. Born and raised, and actually I'm living back in Jefferson County now. I am looking to get a little closer to work, but it hasn't happened yet. The housing market is tough out there to find a nice little place with some acreage for the birding and the gardening and the fishing and stuff that I do. So in Jefferson County, I am actually from a just a little town outside, not even a town. I think they call it a hamlet outside Reynoldsville called Wishaw. It's like 20 minutes from the groundhog, if anybody, to kind of give everyone a reference for about where I am in the state. I have like an Italian American background. My grandparents, that was what I lived, like the Sunday dinners, the get-togethers, the cousins around all the time. So it was a lot of fun growing up there as a kid. And when I was there, I spent all my time, or a lot of my time, outdoors, gardening with my grandpa, going hunting, just running around the neighborhood, out in the country, flipping over rocks, things like that. So that's kind of where my history and interest in the outdoors came from. I have 4 brothers and sisters, and from that I have 9 awesome nieces and nephews that I get to spend my time with. And when they were little, they're growing up. Like some of them are in their 20s, which I can't believe I get to say. um, and and Alana's married. Like that's crazy. In college, like they're doing all kinds of cool things. So I'm really proud of all my nieces and nephews. I don't have a significant other, and I consider or children of my own. So I consider myself a dog mom. I have 2 dogs right now, and over the years I've always had at least one dog with me. But right now it's my babies, Tessa and Cora. They're, like I said, they're my babies. I hang out with them all the time. They do everything with me, follow me around the house. And as far as like connection to mining, my grandpa on my mom's side, he was actually a coal miner for his career. That's what he did for, I want to say 30 to 40, long time. So he did that in both in Jefferson County, but then also like down the Barnesboro area. I forget what the name of the mine was at the moment, but he always told us the stories of like crawling on his side and like in the small spaces and it being dark under there. And he got in the habit of eating his dessert first to make sure you had your dessert, just in case. It was kind of a crazy story, but he always said that. He's always like, eat your dessert first and enjoy it. That was him. And Wishaw, of course, was a little mining town. So at one point, as small as it is now, it used to have thousands of people in it, but you would not know that now. There's ruins, basically, like old houses and stuff that are broken down, but not nearly as many people. And unfortunately, my grandpa did have black lung. We were in the process of getting him like officially diagnosed with that and everything when he did pass away. But so I do have kind of a long mining history. And I wish he had survived long enough to get to see me doing this, because he would have really thought this was cool. Like, going from mining, which he knew very well, to now reclaiming the streams, which he knew were being impacted. He would have really enjoyed this.
That's good to hear that, you have a connection. Everybody that we've been talking to pretty much throughout the course of the last few months here has had some sort of familial connection to the area that they're from. And even if they've gone away and come back, we hear the same story all the time of, there's just a mining heritage and the mining culture across Pennsylvania that despite, and regardless if we're in a field of the environmental protection side, that the families, that the jobs that they had to have in the mining areas of Pennsylvania, it was just it was the nature of the beast. If you're going to support a family, that's what you did. And we come full circle, and we're doing things to clean up legacies of the past. But we've never been one, and others haven't been pointing the finger at the past industry here as we look to them to become partners here in more recent days. But I'd like to take a minute here and maybe have you give an explanation possibly to our viewers, because I don't know if a lot of folks across the state know about what conservation districts do, and the kind of work that's happening in 66 out of 67 counties, I believe. The only county I don't think has one is in Philadelphia area, if I'm correct. And the districts, were created in the 1930s, sort of in response to the devastating effects of like the Dust Bowl, a lot of early agricultural practices, and that may have been an ecological and agricultural disaster at the time in the prairie states of the Western U.S. But that that was caused by droughts, it was caused by winds, and maybe just not so much poor agricultural practices, but maybe they didn't have as many good BMPs that we do today. And here in Pennsylvania, districts were established back in 1945, and their work started out primarily on soil erosion and prevention of getting soil and sediments into our waterways, and then farm and best management practices. But that sort of has evolved into all types of local conservation and even reclamation projects. And I think the coalitions can speak to that, as we're an outgrowth in both eastern and western Pennsylvania of conservation districts. And our programs in the eastern and western part of the state are built around supporting the staff and watershed specialists like yourselves and district staff to help them with abandoned mine reclamation and AMD work. And that's been very fruitful for a very long time for the both of us. So the districts really, they're pretty unique in a lot of ways, and they help set the stage for much of the really good exemplary environmental work that's been going on here in Pennsylvania. So, shout out to Pennsylvania Association of Conservation Districts and Amy and others that are helping to continue to partner with DEP and you all in bringing programs to Pennsylvania's communities. So they are a piece of the puzzle as to why Pennsylvania is viewed as one of the most advanced states in the union, regarding environmental policy, and it's kind of envied for its vast community-based watershed organization movement. So I'm wondering if you could tell us, what's special about Clearfield County Conservation District, and maybe how they operate, what kind of programs are running out of the office there, and are they government agency or nonprofit or something in between, to let our folks know what kind of projects they do, and can they get involved with districts in some way to support their communities?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Clearfield County Conservation District, or well, I should say all districts, are considered a political subdivision of the Commonwealth, which is like, what is that? It's kind of just a unique identifier where we're sort of a subdivision of state government, and we work closely with other state agencies like DEP, DCNR, I'm drawing a blank on a bunch of the other ones, State Conservation Commission, to do the work that we do. And some counties are considered part of the county, as in like they're county employees. They're structured a little different. They might be housed within the county system. We're considered an independent district, meaning that we are partners with the county and we receive support from them and support them in return, but we're independent, as in we're just like our employer is the conservation district. Regardless of how they're formed, conservation districts have a board of directors that we answer to. Ours is made up of 7 directors, and we have 3 associate directors. And if anyone's looking to get involved in their local board, starting on that level, especially the associate director level, is really the place to start. There's also volunteer maybe opportunities, like you could tag along doing monitoring, working with the dirt, gravel, and low volume road program. There's a variety of different programs at each district. But really, I think that associate director position might be kind of just attending meetings and sort of getting involved might be a good way for people to kind of learn more about their local districts. Here in particular, we have 8 employees working here, so 8 different technicians. We have a district manager who runs the show. So he's like the liaison kind of, we all talk. Our board, I will say our board is very good. They are involved, but they don't micromanage us. They trust us to do our job. So they trust me to be the watershed specialist, and they don't, come in and, see what I'm doing day to day. They know that I'm doing my job, that we're all doing our job. So I really do appreciate the work that they do for us. Our board here, I dare say I'll call them the coolest one. And yet, if we're talking about conservation districts or like Clearfield, what makes us special, I think we're one of the coolest ones, but I could be biased on that front. But our technicians, we have, as I mentioned, we have the district manager who runs the show. We also have an administrative assistant who helps us with all the financial stuff, making sure bills get paid, works with me on the grant management side of things, like helping to get invoices paid and doing the reports that I need when I'm reporting to other people for grants. We also have, of course, myself, watershed specialist, working on all things watershed related, which I think we'll kind of get into more as we talk. Resource technician, who that was a new position we added just a few years ago, and he really is helping me with field work side of things. Like the more grant management stuff I get into, he does a lot more of the field work, and I think he is doing a really good job at that. We also have a conservation technician and a conservation specialist, and they do things like erosion and sedimentation permitting reviews, national pollution discharge elimination system, NPDES, if you've heard that terminology. They review those kind of permits to ensure that when there's new construction and things are being built, they're doing it in a way that keeps sedimentation out of our streams. So they're keeping like the soil out of the streams. We also have a dirt, gravel, and low volume road technician who works with our local municipalities to maintain their roads in an environmentally safe way. So like dirt roads that you have, and Pennsylvania has a lot of them, to managing them so that it's not only good for the municipality but also the environment. So the roads stay safe for people to travel, but they're also not sending tons of sediment to our streams. And then we also have our agricultural technician who works with farmers on BMP, which is best management practices, installation on farms, with the whole point being to help the farm with management conditions. So like if it's very muddy, it helps to keep the say cows out of the mud, out of the stream, but it also helps them then be environmentally sensitive as well, so that they aren't impacting the streams, the watersheds that they also depend on. So we have a lot of different programs that we get involved in.
Kelly, I would like to know, your position is funded in Greener. How different is your position than other watershed specialists throughout the county or throughout the state? And why is that position so important to the work that's being done?
Yeah. So I consider the one of the best ways to describe maybe the watershed specialist position is kind of jack of all trades, I dare say. So here in Clearfield, which of course I can speak the best to, well, I should say watershed specialists are very much, what we do is broadly the restoration and protection of the waters in our county. And that could be whatever the county needs. So, for example, obviously where I'm at, we have a lot of abandoned mine drainage and abandoned mine land. So that's why I work primarily on that. Because if I'm not improving the conditions of the waterways in the county. But somewhere like, let's say York or Lancaster counties, they have a lot more agricultural impacts. So they work more on ag then they don't have AMD. Some places are fortunate enough that they don't have a lot of impaired streams. They do a lot more education. And other places like Erie or Delaware, they're like, more estuarine, like bay related. So they have a whole different focus. So the watershed specialist gets to, with that broad job description, gets to focus very much on whatever the county needs, which is really cool because there's not a lot of positions, I don't think, anywhere that can do that. And I've really been able to, so with 17 years here, I've really been able to take this position and I guess I can say kind of do whatever I want, not to a point, because I really have a focus on AMD and I've never put the brakes on, I guess you can say. That's what we work on. And wherever that takes us and my experience takes us, we go for the grants. We throw stuff at the wall and see what happens. Like we don't, whatever I need to do in order to get the streams in Clearfield County restored is what we work on. And so across the state, watershed specialists, like I said, they can all work on a variety of things. So I don't do as much education because I do a lot of on the ground installations of projects and project management, grant management, grant writing. Others can work with, depending on the county makeup or who's working in the county, I should say. If there are a lot of nonprofit and volunteer groups, we can help advise them, like how to set up a monitoring program, how to pull samples, how to maintain any BMPs that maybe have been built, capacity building, that kind of thing, educational stuff. So there's just a variety of things that we are able to help with that I don't think many other positions are able to do, because some other ones are very focused on, of course, because of where their funding comes from, very focused on certain topics, whereas we get to be a little bit broad and just kind of work on whatever the county is really in need of.
And you are local people providing local solutions, basically. Is that what it comes down to?
Yep, essentially. So we're not usually, we're living in the communities where we're doing the work. So we have that local connection. And, if there's another agency that needs to come in, say DEP or DCNR wants to do some work, or EPA or BAM or whoever, we have like the local connections and the local knowledge and the connection to the local communities so that we're able to make things happen and make those connections happen.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kelly. Bobby, back to you.
Yeah, it's good, Kelly. I'm wondering, maybe we'll have a chance to talk about some of the watersheds. I threw a link out there from your district webpage about the different watersheds that are throughout Clearfield County and probably fall into surrounding counties as well, depending on how big those watersheds are. But a number of them are, like you had said, there's some community watershed organizations and groups that are out there and TU chapters that are doing some really good on the ground work and, putting their boots on the ground, and they're doing the things that you've mentioned and are helping out with and providing some level of technical assistance or grant writing assistance or just even coordination and outreach and education. So the districts are to be commended for that type of work. From your bio, we kind of learned that Clearfield County is obviously the most impacted county in the entire nation regarding legacy coal mining, including the most stream miles degraded by AMD, the most abandoned mine lands, and the highest abandoned mine inventory. And we often get to DC and we get to work with our legislators and our congressmen and women throughout Pennsylvania and make it well known with GT Thompson and others about how important it is to maintain funding for this type of work, not only within that district, but other districts across the state here. And I'm wondering if you could just tell us a little bit about efforts being made to kind of reverse that legacy of degradation, both by the districts and as well as, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and our partners, and including ourselves and Whipcammer. And kind of other groups that are leading the charge. So what's going on there that you can highlight a few projects that maybe we can discuss a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned, we're number one. That's our claim to fame. So that's primarily what I've been working on in my 17 years with the district. And so what we've done is to get a handle on it, there are over 670 miles of stream listed in the county as impaired by abandoned mine drainage. And we've looked at the worst of those and created watershed restoration plans to kind of prioritize what work needs to be done within those watersheds to restore them. So we've got a bunch of those, and I can just name a few. It's just going kind of downriver. Montgomery Creek, Anderson Creek, people will be very familiar with that one, I'm sure. I'm working a lot on Morgan Run, which is a tributary to Clearfield Creek, which is another one that probably folks have heard of, as well as the Red Moshannon, which there's also a watershed group working on that stream. So kind of anywhere across the county. Unfortunately, the northern part of the county is in the Moshannon State Forest, and it seems like that section was protected. So there is a section of the county we do have where there was not AMD impairments, like no mining. We do have pockets of really good, clean water, clean fishable water. So we have wild trout populations. So we do have some Class A trout populations. But on the flip side, we do have quite a bit of impacts from mining. So a lot of AML sites. So think of them as moonscapes. Like areas where vegetation just either is very stunted or just simply doesn't grow. And then the coal refuse and the overburden from those can run off into the streams. And of course, we have a ton of discharges that discharge to our waterways and turn them red, white, or they're completely clear, which does not, obviously in this community, we know that does not necessarily mean that they're clean. There can be a bunch of metals in there in very highly acidic conditions. So we are actually working on quite a few of the watersheds across the county. I currently have projects going on right now in Montgomery Creek and Anderson Creek and Morgan Run, of course, the ones that I mentioned because they're at the top of my mind. But we have systems in Deer Creek, like multiple existing systems. So kind of to keep it clear, we do the assessments. So there's a bunch of those in existence, and I'm working actually on a new one with the Pennsylvania Game Commission on assessing a watershed in state game lands that's pretty impaired. With that assessment, then you can start working on designing some treatment for these watersheds or for these discharges. I have several sites that I have under design right now is the best way to put it. And then I do have a couple sites currently under construction. So we're building passive treatment systems as we speak. And then with that comes completed systems that we now have to maintain. So we have to keep them running because the improvements that we're seeing are very much dependent on the systems that we're building continuing to operate. So that's kind of what we're doing. And the state also has been working in the county. So the Bureau of Abandoned Mine Reclamation, for years now, they've been tackling a lot more of the surface reclamation. So taking those moonscapes, those AML sites, the high walls, those areas, types of areas, and reclaiming them. And now that we have kind of access to the AML AMD grant funding, before we were doing a lot of the work as much as we could with whatever grant funds we could put together. So that's a really good point to mention. We're only able to do this work with grant funding, with state, federal, local funding. So things like Growing Greener. The EPA 319 non-point source program has been a great supporter of work here in the county. And this new AML AMD grant program that I mentioned. So without sources like that, we would not be able to do this because nobody just has, funding set aside in-house to be able to tackle such big projects as these.
Kelly, you're talking about grant funding. Can you tell us a little bit how it is to work with all the different grant sources you're using and how you balance the needs of landowners versus watershed groups with the work that you want to get done?
Yeah. Oh, it's exciting. In one word, if I had to say one, because there are so many different grant sources. So my life is kind of built around getting those grants, managing them, doing them properly, doing all the compliance, everything with them so that we stay eligible, and using them to put projects on the ground. And sometimes I have to take multiple grants and match them together in order to be able to get enough funding together or meet match requirements, because some grants do have match requirements to make projects happen. So there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of interconnectedness, and that's just on the funding level. And on that respect, wherever the funding's coming from, they might have slightly different requirements. So you have to be kind of very mindful of this program wants reporting done this way. This program needs reporting done that way. This can match with that. This can't match with that. Those kind of things. So there's a lot of moving pieces on just the funding level. And then when it comes down to in AMD, we've been very fortunate that the landowners are pretty open to working with us. I mean, we're only able to do so much on a site. So when we get grant funding, when anybody gets grant funding, really, it's very much tied to a very specific purpose. So it's not like you can get money. Let's say I'm going to build an AMD system. Oh, wait, I changed my mind. We're going to do something else. You can't do that. When you get grant funding, it's very specified to, like you say, you're going to do this, you're going to do it. You can't just do what you want with that funding. So when we go to a landowner, we have to build a relationship, ask them what they want to see on their property. What will you allow? Here are the ponds that we need to build. What kind of concerns do you have? What do you want to log the site ahead of time so that you get the value out of your timber that you have? We need to be able to maintain the system, so we need to be able to get access to it. They're usually a lot concerned about roads, so you have to have them on board from the very beginning and very involved in the project, or it might not happen because without the landowner, it's not like we're coming in and taking anything over. We have to work very closely with the landowner. And some watershed groups or other nonprofits, sometimes that grant management can be very difficult because you have to have procedures in place, policies in place that make sure that you're spending the money appropriately, which just saying it here doesn't sound big, but there's a lot to it. You need to be able to get single audits. You need to have the financial record keeping capabilities, being able to pay invoices while you're waiting for reimbursements. Have someone basically, I would say, having a full-time staff. Not that you can't do it, like couldn't get a grant in our world without a paid staff, but I feel like it would be really, really difficult to do, because you almost have to have someone there full time to keep an eye on both the financial management side of things, like that part of the grant, but then also project management, keeping your finger on the pulse of the project and making sure what's supposed to happen is happening. Contractors are doing what they're supposed to do. Contracts have been written properly, like all that kind of stuff. So grants are, while it's my life, and I think I thrive. I've had this discussion with friends, and here I think I thrive on a little bit of chaos, because that's what grants kind of are when you're dealing with a lot of them. And I'm just kind of speaking to the AMD ones, but I'm also involved here at the district with kind of any grants that we get, like agricultural grants, other things like that. So I'm working on so many grants at any given time that it's just, like I said, chaos, organized chaos, kind of.
My goodness, we're a woman of many hats. Back to you, Bobby.
No, I think both Andy and Ann and I and Mike and others here between the coalitions can very much relate to the amount of work that's going on and the effort it takes to not just only be a juggler and a master of all these different kind of programs that are out there, and to be the local liaison and the community, sort of folks in the community that are trying to weave together all these different sources of funding to really make projects happen in our community. And I don't think that most people really see that and understand how much effort really goes into that. And if they did, they might give us some grace in both time and effort that goes into a lot of this work, as well as just the other partners of ours at the state and federal level that we have to kind of navigate all these hurdles and impediments and try and look at the administrative issues that we have to deal with, and sort of the way we have to work with these grants and see what's the best way for us to be able to move these projects forward. So and along those lines, each of the, I think a lot of the counties, this might be more particular to the Chesapeake Bay, which we're majority of the impacts are in the Chesapeake Bay watershed, and the state does have a program where there are these countywide action plans that have been developed. And how are they related to your work, or have you included recommendations for projects in your plans to go forward? And what are they, and what are some of the actions that might be listed in Clearfield's plan?
So the countywide action plans, it's kind of Pennsylvania's not, I won't say answer, that's kind of a weird way to say it, but it's one of the ways that Pennsylvania is working to meet the goals of the Chesapeake Bay TMDL and the Phase 3 WIP, the Watershed Implementation Plan. So the Chesapeake Bay is a very big focus for a lot of folks, for a lot of states, multiple states. So as folks might know, the Chesapeake Bay has been hit hard over like the last, I'll say 30, but my gosh, it could be, 50, 60, long time. Because we know that even in Pennsylvania, there's been mining for how long, and how long has there been farming and those kind of activities. So it's been hit heavily. And, people local to the Bay down there had noticed, fisheries suffering, algal blooms, things like that. And over the last, like I said, 30 plus years, coalitions have come together, multi-state organizations like the Chesapeake Bay Commission have come together to bring the states together to work on whatever's necessary to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. And when you clean up the Chesapeake Bay, you're also cleaning up your local, so you're cleaning up your local waterways, which benefits the local area, but then it also helps the Chesapeake Bay. So it's not like the focus is completely on the Bay. By doing the restoration work up here to help down there, we're helping our local communities and our local environments as well. So in Pennsylvania, there is what's called the countywide action plan, and there's a coordinator in each county for that plan. And I can speak specifically to Clearfield because each county is a little different, of course, I think, as we've mentioned before. Prior to coming to Clearfield, so they sort of had counties develop these in a wave, starting from where the Susquehanna River leaves the county, working north, because the Susquehanna is the major tributary to the Chesapeake Bay, and work north. So they had worked with counties like Lancaster, York, Adams, Franklin, things like that first. And they were very agriculturally focused. That was their problem. As they came more northward, more upstream, they started to encounter counties like, well, we'll just say Clearfield, where here we had a lot more mining impacts. We do have farms, and those farms certainly can use assistance, and we work with them very closely. But our impairments are all abandoned mine drainage. So it was a very, like, I don't want to say clash, kind of a clash, where, you know, the focus had been so very much on agriculture, but now I'm saying the problems here are AMD and a lot of the sites that were, you know, just identified by mapping, just, you know, from a far off computer, maybe down in DC or Maryland, saw some fields in Clearfield County and said, oh, those are farm fields. But they were actually former mine land sites that were just reclaimed and growing in grass. So they aren't contributing the same, you know, they're not a farm field. So they're not contributing the same kind of nutrients that a farm field would. So we had to work all that kind of stuff out when we first got to our part in the countywide action planning. And so each county has a coordinator. You could hire a coordinator. We chose to do it in-house, meaning that we as the district put our plan together. We didn't hire a consultant to do it for us. We sat down for months and talked about what was very important to our county, what made sense here, what do we need. And ours is a very diversified, I'll say, county action-wide plan, a CAP plan. So we included things in there. You've got your typical stuff. Of course, we speak to the agriculture because that has been such a focus. But I added everything in there that I could think of. We've got AMD in there. We've got acid deposition. We've got stream restoration projects, in addition to the stormwater and the ag, that kind of thing. So while we aren't yet able to use a lot of the funding towards that, we use like the AMD grant funding for our AMD work, but we still highlighted that AMD and a bunch of issues were important to us. So our plan, oh my goodness, it's like 30 some, yeah, what is it now? Like 30 or 40 pages, because it just kind of keeps getting bigger. Because I wanted everything in there that could possibly be a priority. Because that plan then we can point to and say, this is a priority for our county. So it's not just watershed based for us, it's countywide based for us. And that has been really good. While it hasn't helped a lot yet with the AMD work, it has had a big impact on the work that we're able to do with our agricultural community. It's funded a lot of great projects in the last 4 years and is ongoing. So we do have more work going on this year that's being funded by CAP programming. So it's been great. It was a rough process at first because writing that plan, any restoration plan can be tough, but it was difficult, but I'm glad we did it the way we did, because now it's very tailored to our needs and we're very familiar with it. And it is actually making a difference here locally.
Kelly, given all the projects that you have worked on, do you have one actually near and dear to your heart that you're most proud of?
Oh, I kind of do. Anyone who sees me at meetings or whatever, you'll hear me talk a lot about Morgan Run. It's still in process. So if I had to say which one I'm proud of, though, I think I'm going to have to go with Deer Creek. So the Deer Creek treatment system. When I first started with the district, the prior watershed specialist, who just happens to be my best friend, Rachel Kester, she had since, when she moved on to a different job, I was able to come in as the watershed specialist. And since then, we became best friends. But when I first came on, I was handed she did an assessment of Deer Creek. I took that assessment and followed through, very green to this world, finished the watershed assessment, finished the restoration plan, got it recognized as a 319 WIP. And then we started working on the actual discharges in the watershed. And we chose so there's kind of been two different ways to tackle things as far as treating AMD. Either try to get everything from the headwaters down, start at the top and work your way down. That's one approach. Or hit the worst first. And I like the worst first option because you see the biggest bang for your buck quickly or relatively quickly, we'll say. So in that instance, we hit the worst discharge area in that watershed, built a treatment system back in. So I started in 2009 with this work. In 2017, we built a passive treatment system in Deer Creek. So that whole time we were working on it. Once we built that system, we could see an improvement in Deer Creek right away. And after a couple years, we gave it a couple years to do its thing. After a couple years, we went back and we're doing more monitoring. We did a fishery survey, and lo and behold, we found young of year trout. So we improved conditions in that watershed. So even though there's a little bit more work to do in Deer Creek, I think that has to be probably one of the things that I'm most proud of. I proved that it can be done. And I have a watershed in the county that says, like, that we worked on, that is a success, that I can say. So that was probably my proudest, I think, project, if I had to pick one.
It certainly sounds like Deer Creek is on its way to restoration, complete restoration, and you. Of course, we can understand why you're so proud of that. You, Bob.
Yeah, no, we love hearing stories of the trout returning to the native waters across Pennsylvania here, whether the brook trout in particular, but there's a lot of efforts going on across the state to just bring back these potential opportunities for recreation and to have our youth and children in these communities be able to fish where they may not have been had that opportunity for probably 50 or 60 years. And the kind of work you're doing is really showcasing that there is hope with a lot of hard work that goes into these projects to bring about the restoration of these streams for both recreational, trail, just local community impacts that start bringing people back to the area to do that kind of positive outdoor environmental, connections that we all, seem to need and want to have. So I remember, speaking of streams and restoration work, I wanted to mention here, because I wanted to bring it up because I forgot where we were. I think we were outside of Dubois or Dubois. I don't know how you say it now, but do you remember when we filmed the AMD? It was an epic tale that Anne had directed, and
Yep.
you acted and played the part of one of our evil villainesses of the filamentous algae. And I know we had a lot of fun with making that particular video, and one of our former 319 program champions, I like to call her, Donna Carnahan, was a part of that as well. And I know she's one of your, amigos out there that you all get to do some things together. And I was happy to do that with her. But do you remember, where were we? Would you remember the name of that stream that we were and what watershed we were in?
I do. I remember very well because I was like, was it like 2010? So I was here like not quite a year, or maybe a year. So it was really cool for me. And it was Dubois. So that's in the northwest part of the county. And
Okay.
the stream that we were on was the Sandy Lick Creek. And it it actually flows to the Allegheny River. So it goes westward towards Jefferson County and onward. So eventually ending up down past Pittsburgh, of course. But yeah, that was a lot of fun because I got to play a villain for like the first time in my life, and Lady Filamentous Algae. So which was pretty cool. And I actually, for a Halloween party later, like maybe that year or the next, I dressed as Filamentous Algae and one person knew, well, a couple of people knew, but it was funny. Like our current board chairman, I ran into him and he knew exactly what I was. He was like, "Oh, you're filamentous algae." I'm like, "Yes, you guessed her." So it was pretty, and it was a lot of fun. That was a great opportunity.
That's great. Yeah, because I mean, you think about 16 years ago, and it may have been a few years before that when Mike and I kind of developed the concept for a color book that we called the AMD Adventures and the Pollution Posse. And, we had this sort of battle going on between good and evil to clean up our waterways. And, Mike and I had gotten some nicknames at that time, the Limestone Cowboy and the Swampy. And, we worked with some other arts locations in our area, and they created costumes for the characters, and then we put them in the schools, and we did environmental skits. And so very fun way of talking about what we're doing out there and just coming along with some activities. And so it's expanded well beyond those characters today, and now we have trout puppets that go into the schools, and we have programs with them. So it was really good to have you step up in that early part of your career and do some fun work with us it was a very hot day. I remember going out and working with Will from Jennings Environmental Education Center that we went to as well when we were filming, and we had a lot of fun. So I thank you for participating, in that fun skit and film that you can find on the YouTube that I think Ann had posted for us if people want to get a laugh. It's a pretty interesting production that Ann put together. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had a blast. That was a lot of fun, and I still to this day, like if somebody new starts or I run into somebody, I'm like, you got to watch this video. Like I remember when our current district manager Willie, when he started, at some point I was like, you got to watch this video that I filmed with F camera. And whip camera a while back. You just got to watch it, and he did. So everybody in our office gets to see that, like run a regular. We bring it up every now and again. So, and I have the from your book, I have the Filmentis algae page at home. I should have brought it in. I have it at home. I printed it out and I colored in Filmentis like with all the greens. So like shortly after that, because I was like, yeah, I got to play villain in this. This is really cool.
That's great. That's great.
Kelly, we hear that you and Rachel Kester have another epic tale sampling and monitoring of a treatment system relating to trout. Can you tell us about any more trout stories that you have in your back pocket?
Oh my gosh, Rachel and I have a lot of trout stories. So when she left here and I became the watershed specialist, she moved on to National Trout Unlimited. And because of the nature of what she was doing there, she was working on abandoned mine drainage still. And we worked together all the time. We were in the field together constantly. They had a program, and they still do, but they had a program called Unassessed Waters, where they were looking for trout populations in waters where that had not previously been surveyed. So I went along with them on Rachel on so many different streams in Clearfield County. We went to easy to access ones that were just like, you hop out of the truck and go do the fishery survey and you've got your trout and hey, it's a great day. Then we went to others where you're hiking miles out into the woods, and a local that we knew took us back in their truck and dropped us off, and we walked back, and it was a hot day and we had waders on, and we were roasting in our own waders, but we found trout. So it was worth it. Those kind of days. And then probably some of the best days, a couple times when we would be doing like presence absence surveys. So not so much for actual data input where you're counting on catching every trout that you see that day, but we just wanted to go out and see. Sometimes Rachel and I would do fishery surveys. It was just her and I, which if you've done fishery surveys, that could be a little hard because you've got one person running the electro backpack shocker and one person netting and hauling the bucket. We did it, and we found we would go out and like check just kind of how are things going, what's this stream looking like, and we would catch those trout, and we would trip along the way and we'd see snakes or a cool flower, which we still do to this day. We're nature nerds. We get very much distracted by what we see out there when we're doing surveys, or just simply like last night we were birding for 3 hours. Just anything that we saw, we were just like, cool, that's really neat. So that's just kind of our personalities, and maybe between the two of us, maybe some of the coolest as far as like trout surveys and trout stories that we have. When she was at National and I was here working on Deer Creek, she was focusing on just like I was focusing on Deer Creek, she was focusing on Potts Run, which is a tributary to Clearfield Creek. And we were building systems on there approximately the same time. And she was part of the survey when we went on Deer Creek and found trout for the first time in how many decades in Deer Creek, thanks to the treatment system. And we're just walking and we're having difficulty finding the last one because you need to have so many adults and so many young of year, which are also called YOY, young of year. And we were surveying, and lo and behold, we found enough fish of the right age classes that day in Deer Creek to classify it, to submit it to Fish and Boat to say, hey, this is recovered enough that to fish here, we can list it now as wild trout. And one of my pictures that I wish I could bring up on command, but I don't think, since I'm on my phone, I'm not sure I can find it quick enough, but it's me standing there with this tiny little trout that's like that big. It's a young a year brook trout in Deer Creek, and it proved that the trout could reproduce there. And she was there with me like the whole, doing the survey, but then giving me, encouragement all along the way when I was working on the design and the construction. And she took that picture of me holding that trout. And then a couple years later, when the Potts Run work was done, which was that's her stream, that's local to her in her backyard. After building a treatment system on it with National Trout Unlimited, several years go by, very similar thing. We go out with a survey crew, and we did the same thing. We were able to find young of year trout at the mouth of Potts Run, meaning that we reconnected through that project, reconnected several miles of stream, and I have a picture of her with young of year trout from the mouth of Potts Run. So kind of together we evolved, and were able to see some streams that we were working on find these baby trout that wouldn't have otherwise been there had we not worked on these streams.
And just for our
Yeah, Kelly,
listeners, what about trout? Are they very sensitive? What's the deal with them?
Yeah, so Pennsylvania has one native trout. I mean, some people are probably going to be upset with me because you start talking about like estuaries, but when you're talking about, central Pennsylvania, you're talking about the brook trout. That is the one that belongs here. That is the one that it's native. And you can find it naturally reproducing, and it is sensitive so it can live in smaller streams. It's sensitive really to temperature because it's a cold water fish. And when mining and other industrial activities were going through, their habitat and their populations were heavily impacted. So you will find streams where, maybe the headwaters is pretty good, and then a discharge comes in, and then all of a sudden trout can't survive. So they are like our keystone species when we're looking at restoration, because if you can improve a watershed enough to bring back trout, like where they can now survive in areas that were once heavily impaired by acidity, low pH, and high metals, if you can get rid of that and bring those trout back, they respond, and they respond relatively quickly. Like once they're able to access a place, they're no longer chemically disjointed from there. They're not blocked from being able to be in there. They can survive. They come back, and they're your indicator that it worked. What you did made a difference. And through conversations I've had with the Chesapeake Bay and with our local fish and boat office, AMD, cleaning up abandoned mine drainage, is one of, if not the primary way, at least in Pennsylvania, to bring back stream miles for wild trout. Like you can remove barriers, that helps too, and you can certainly work on agricultural projects, but it seems like actually bringing back stream miles, AMD is one of the biggest things that brings back the biggest miles of wild trout waters for brook trout. So whenever we see one somewhere that we didn't, that's really important. And then also it has ramifications for protecting that stream. So if you find wild trout, particularly wild brook trout, that then put certain protections on that stream to prevent it from being further impacted by whatever industry, whether it's logging or whatever. It gives that stream further protections.
Excellent. Thank you. Back to you, Bobby.
Yeah, Kelly, I was able to pull up while we were talking the Potts Run work that Rachel had written, and I think if you just scroll through the first few pages at the link I provided, it does show you. You provided the photo with that nice trout sitting in your hand. It's a pretty decent sized trout there. So if people get a chance to look at a lot of the links that we've been providing as we're going through the program here, I think you're going to find a wealth of information and knowledge about not only the work that's going on in Clearfield County, but a number of the other organizations that are working on AMD, including the conservation districts, ourselves, the Chesapeake Bay program, Trout Unlimited, Pennsylvania Council Trout Unlimited, just so many partners come to the table in the name of clean water. And so a lot of the work that we're doing really is the ultimate goal is to have clean water for our communities. And so we're kind of wondering here what maybe the next big thing for you in Clearfield County going forward here in the coming months ahead or into the summer and fall. What are you up to today?
Yeah, well, since we are getting into the summer and things are warming up and the conditions are improving, construction season is upon us. So I have one of my systems, as far as AMD, one system currently under construction. It started back up, and my biggest site, which is the Morgan Run MR7 treatment system, it is going to be, I'm just waiting on a few budget things, working out with BAMR, and then that will be starting again this year. And I'm excited about that one because when that one's completed, Morgan Run is going to take a flip. So it's going to go from pretty bad to pretty good, or well, good. It'll be improving because the MR7 discharge is like the number one cause of impairment. It's the biggest contributor of acidity and metal loading to Morgan Run. So by cleaning it up, we're going to see a huge difference in Morgan Run. And so hopefully that will be like my next success and happy story that I get to share with people. We also have a lot of our like other kind of projects. So our agricultural projects are all starting as well. We've been bidding out a couple projects this year to help some farmers, and we've got a stream restoration project that'll be happening in July, and our dirt, gravel, and low volume road program. Which will be starting up very soon. Like, we've worked with the municipalities. So they're a lot, from what I hear from our technician, which is Rachel. She's now with us here at the district. She's back. Came back a couple years ago. So it's cool that I get to work with my best friend. A lot of those projects will be starting soon. So we've got a busy construction season this summer. And I've also got applications in to to continue work on AMD and AML reclamation. So as those come through, we're just going to keep going. So we've got a lot of irons in the fire and a lot of projects coming up, but it's good. It's a good thing. It's good to be busy, and it's good to have projects going on the ground.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now we're getting toward the close of the program, Kelly. We ask all of our interviewees, do you have any words of wisdom for people out there?
Oh, yeah. So never give up. Never think that an idea is stupid or, oh, that'll never work, so you don't even try. Try. Because a lot of the stuff that I've done, it's not straightforward. Sometimes you've got to really work at it to make something happen, to make something a success story. And if you never try something, if you don't try to go for that grant, if you don't try to get the grant to monitor, if you don't talk to the landowners, if you don't call BAMR and ask them, what can we do here? Surely nothing will ever get done. So as long as you try and you don't just don't discourage yourself. I sometimes call it like throwing stuff at the wall until you see what sticks. Just keep trying at stuff, because, one day, especially with grants, you might try to write something like 2 or 3 years in a row, but maybe in that 4th year it gets funded. You get better at writing it. You tailor it better. You have a better plan. So just never give up and never stop trying to do something.
Words to live by. Back to you, Bobby.
Yeah, well, Kelly, thanks again for joining us today. We're really thankful to have people like you as a friend and partner, and I love running into you at meetings that we get to see each other at across the state, since I'm out here in the east. But when I get to come central PA or western PA, it's always good to be at the table with you and fight for the things that we both love and all of us enjoy here in Pennsylvania, and cleaning up our waterways. So I want to let everybody kind of let them know that they should stay tuned for the first Friday of every month at 12 noon for new episodes of the Pennsylvania Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles. And we've got some other interested guests lined up here as we're coming upon our first season in, and hopefully we get to do more of this in the future. And our funders and some of the sponsors and ads that we generate can help us to support this program going forward to get a bigger following. And our next lineup here in the speakers, if you mark your calendars for next month, at Friday, June 5th at noon, our interview is going to be with Kristen Riley, who's the executive director for the Choose Clean Water Coalition, who's a very good friend and colleague of ours, and kind of coordinates and talks about juggling a lot of groups and partnerships with over 350 coalition members across the Chesapeake Bay watershed. We're going to bring her on and see what's going on with the new Chesapeake Bay Management Plan and some things that they're up to. And we'll probably hear about what happened at the conference that's going to be down in Lancaster, PA in May. And I'll be down there as well. So we're going to be talking to her and seeing what's going on in the overall Chesapeake Bay picture.
And Bobby, we still have advertising sponsorship opportunities, so you can see the sponsorship levels in the App Camera store. So until then, everyone have a great month coming up, and we'll see you next time on Abandoned Mine Reclamation Chronicles.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Have a good weekend.
Bye.